also now invite Nolin from Melbourne. Could you hear me? Can you try to click on the unmute button? Yes, you would. Go ahead.
Can't hear you.
Nolin, can you speak louder, please?
Hi.
Very good.
Cool. I'm about to move overseas. My family don't really support me with anything that I do. So how can I go about it when I tell them what I'm about to do?
Okay. Try to be very patient and establish your heart in kindness and forgiveness. So when we have to talk to people about difficult things that they may not agree with or like, you have to bring up the goodwill in yourself first, so that when you talk to them, the right energy, the right atmosphere is established. Then you have to think of the right words that will be, not going to provoke them or get them angry or annoyed. So try and find the right words, the best words you can that you can think of. And then you have your goodwill, and you pick the right time. When you have to speak to someone about any difficult subject, pick the right time when they're not too stressed, too busy. Pick the right words, the right time, and you just have a go and see what you can do. And if you don't immediately get a good outcome, they don't like what they hear, they don't agree with you, they argue with you, just be patient with that. Step back a bit, and maybe you have to talk to them again. If it's something important to you, you may have to make several efforts over time, but you always have to come from a place of goodwill and try and see their point of view. If they have a different view from you, they look at life and what you're doing differently, try to accept that. It doesn't mean to say you have to agree with them, but just accept their point of view, try and see where they're coming from. And then when you talk to them, keep the goodwill, don't go into anger, because anger only pushes people apart and destroys things. So try and keep the goodwill, the patience as you're dealing with this difficult thing that you have to get across to them.
Yes. I do everything that you just said, be patient and, pick the right time. But it's just, I get anger from them and all that kind of stuff. And because I love them, it's hard to deal with that. Like I have to accept it, but it's just, I want them to just, like, kind of join my journey with where I'm at right now, and just believe in me, because
Sometimes you have to trust in your own good intention. So your intention is not to harm anybody or take advantage of anybody or do anything to hurt anyone. So you trust in that. And if there's still miscommunication, misunderstanding, well, that's where you need the patience. You have to say, well, I've got my good intention. I don't want to hurt anyone. They don't yet understand things the way I do. We don't yet see eye to eye. So I'm going to take the time to try and develop that understanding. How long it takes, it may take a short while, it may take forever, who knows. Life is not perfect. So, it's quite hard for two human beings to fully understand each other. So maybe you have to accept like a compromise. So as long as they they're reasonably okay to allow you to do what you're doing, and you're okay with them on a reasonable level. It's not perfect, it's not absolute agreement, but you find a working relationship. Maybe that's good enough. And you find the middle way there. Maybe it's impossible to get another person to completely understand and see things from your point of view. But as long as you can work together and keep going without, destroying each other, hurting each other, maybe it's good enough. You just agree to disagree, and you keep going, and you keep developing the kindness and compassion. Maybe in the long run, that will win out.
It will. Thank you so much. It's great to be on this journey with you and everyone else on here. Thank you.
Okay, I wish you well.
Thank you.
Okay, there is another question. Lampo, this one is about the Maranusati practice. So this person has been practicing Maranusati daily. The question is this kind of practice good enough? How does one meditate on death as an object? Is recollection on death the same as meditation on death? Would Anapanasati be considered as death meditation? Thank you.
Yeah, in the beginning, the recollection of death, Maranusati, one can do just as what we call a discursive meditation. One is thinking around that theme. In the very beginning, maybe that's the best way to develop it. Think about what death means to you as an experience. If I was to die now, at this moment, what would it mean? It means separation from all the people and things you love and like. That would all end. So you're just bringing up the concept first and then thinking through some ideas around it. What would it bring up? Well, it'd probably bring up fear, anxiety. So you're contemplating that. Why do I have fear? Why is there this anxiety? When death is certain, why do I fear it? Because it's definitely going to happen. So just investigating the whole thing as a discursive meditation. But then, having done that and prepared yourself, you bring up a single word that may symbolize death to you. So it could be the word death, or in Pali we have the word maranang, means death, or maranang me niyatang, death is certain, or maranang me bhavisati, which means recollect, be mindful of the fact of death. Some people do it as a visual thing, and they visualize themselves in a coffin or as a corpse. So there are a few different approaches. The idea is to get one single object of mind, the word, the visual image, and stick with that as a way to develop mindfulness. And if it has a powerful meaning for you, death means the end of things, means letting go of everything, separation from everything. So as a meditation, it's helping you with that idea in mind to bring up mindfulness, bring the mind to the present moment, and let go of all the mental hindrances that come up as we're developing the mind in samadhi. So if the mind gathers together in samadhi, it's because it's merged with that one word or that one concept or that one image. But then to deepen your level of samadhi, we would call it apana. To develop apana samadhi or jhana, you need to develop a different object. So you might meditate on the theme of death up to a point, what we call upajjhara samadhi, where the mind has become calm, stable, one-pointed. Then from there, you develop mindfulness of the breathing, which can take you to jhana. Sometimes you can practice them in the beginning together. So as you breathe in, breathe out, you recollect death in conjunction with the breath. But eventually you'll get to a point where you don't want any words or concepts in your mind. The mind becomes so still and one-pointed, you actually drop the word death or buddho or any other word. And you're just with the breath, and then you emerge with the breath, and you may get to a point where the breath itself is completely still. So the movement of the breath seems to have gone. The in and out breath doesn't seem to be manifesting, but you're completely aware. You're not asleep. You're not gone. You're there, but the movement of the breath disappears and you're just with the mind itself. And the idea is to maintain mindfulness at that point. So there's a few different pathways into the practice, and some people find the recollection of death is very good for just cutting out all the other distractions, attachments, thinking, worrying of the mind, brings the mind right to the present moment. So try it. And then maybe move from the contemplation of death into developing anapanasati from there. That's one way to do it. But you have to experiment with these things and see what works with you. But the recollection of death is such a powerful contemplation because one, it's bringing you right in line with the truth, and it's getting you to see the impermanence of absolutely everything in your life. You know, this body, this mind, people, the things you love and like and identify with. You know, the idea of death cuts through it all. So it's a very powerful meditation, but obviously it's something one has to gradually develop. It's not easy, certainly in the beginning. There's a lot of resistance in the mind. So you gently keep working on it and think around it, you know, develop the discursive side of mindfulness of death by recollecting death and what it means to you as a way to become familiar with it.
Father Longpa. So Longpa, so another question would be, what would be the best chant to chant around family members or friends or even animals who are experiencing near death?
There's probably not one particular chant. You have to be practical about this. So a chant that you know well yourself and you have faith in is a good chant because you'll put your energy into that. Maybe you can remember it so you can chant it well. And when a chant is chanted well by someone with mindfulness, it often develops a very good feeling, good energy in their mind, and that can transfer to the mind of the one listening. So it could be paritta chanting is a very standard thing. You invite monks sometimes when someone's dying, you bring them and they chant the parittas. Could be the Buddha's words on loving kindness. So if you know them in English, you could chant that. If you know the Pali, you could chant that. It could be any of the evening chanting reflections or the evening chanting itself. You know, if someone is dying, sometimes that's a long drawn out experience. So you may chant many things next to them over many days. And then having chanted, you may also practice the loving kindness meditation right next to that person and send your thoughts to them. The chanting is good because if they're still able to hear and they hear those words and they've been practicing Buddhist for a while and they know those words, they hear the sound, that can be a very comforting sound to them, and it can help calm them down from the fear of death, can help stimulate very wholesome memories, wholesome perceptions at that time close to death. And that can be very important for people because when we get a bit of extra help like that, the mind goes to a very wholesome object, and maybe it takes that object as we die. If you have a wholesome object, you know, it can be very helpful going into the next life. So, you know, chanting is a good thing to do. Whatever chant you can do. So parittas is a very good one. Buddha's words on loving kindness is a good one. If you know that person, what they like to chant, well, chant it for them. That might bring them some happiness. As I've said before, like I've been with people who've got Alzheimer's and are completely unable to communicate anymore, very kind of agitated, unable to speak properly. But when they hear Buddhist chanting, because they have a foundation in that, it calms them down, and you can see the calming effect of it. People who are just vaguely conscious, lying in a bed, not really able to speak, but they hear the chanting, it seems to calm them, soothe them. So really, whatever you can do, whatever you can offer, it's an offering to the person who's dying. And sometimes even people who don't have much to do with Buddhism, but they hear the chanting, they feel good. So sometimes we've been in hospitals chanting for somebody who's dying, and families and people in another bed have come afterwards or said afterwards they really appreciated it, even though they're not Buddhists. They just like the sound. So maybe not everyone, but some people are quite open to chanting. They find it very soothing, calming, helps them to relax, helps them to let go.
Sadhu Nampa. I remember that when my dad was passing away, I received a message from Lumpur Sumedho Surajana Circle to read this story of a teaching of our real home by Ajahn Chah. And I thought that that story was really very helpful. Perhaps, Lumpur, you could expound a little bit about that story on our real home given by Ajahn Chah.
Of course, yeah. Listening to Dhamma, so reading, somebody nearby reading Dhamma to somebody who's sick can be a very wholesome thing. Even if they can't respond and you're doubting that they really are picking up, you never know, because sometimes the mind is able to hear, even though physically you can't respond anymore, you can still hear. People who've been in that state and then recovered a bit and said, well, I could hear what was being said. So if you read Dhamma to someone, it's like chanting. It can be a very powerful stimulus to bring up wholesome Dhammas in their mind, improve their state of mind.
Okay, so the question is about doing business. And in doing business, this person says that one needs to either try to convince another party by reconstructing truth or manipulating facts with the intention to try to close the deal. Would this be considered wrong livelihood? Would this be considered wrong speech, wrong action, and wrong intention?
Well, the person asking the question or in that situation has to consider that for themselves. What is their intention? And unfortunately, with business deals and negotiations and that kind of thing, the opportunity for greed, self-view and greed to come into it is high. So you have to consider it over time. Maybe this is a regular part of your life. You have to start thinking, is this really good? Am I encouraging my greed at the expense of other people? So, am I being dishonest? Because often deals are done without fully disclosing all the information, just trying to get a deal done, make the money without being fully honest. These are the areas you have to look at. And if you really look at it closely and you notice you're being dishonest, your greed is leading, you just want to get the deal, get the money without really being aware of the humanity of the person you're dealing with and being honest, well, after a while, you might not feel comfortable with that. So I know people who have been in jobs like that, and after a while, because they meditate and they're becoming more aware of their intention and the mental states that lie behind their actions as they go about that kind of business, it leads them to the point they just don't want to do it anymore. They don't feel comfortable with themselves. They feel compassion for other people. But having said that, up to a point, it's just normal in business. You've got to push your product, your whatever it is you're trying to sell or get the other people to engage with you and buy or whatever. Up to a point, everyone understands that's just the way of business, and you talk up your product and make it seem good and get them happy to buy it, and it's their choice whether they buy it or not. So up to a point, you just have to accept that's the nature of business, and it's imperfect, but if it's not done with too strong an intention to manipulate, take advantage, well, you may just have to accept that's the nature of business. But if you're practicing, and particularly if you meditate, you'll start to notice some of these more subtle, unwholesome mental states coming up. And sooner or later, you're not going to be comfortable with yourself. So you'll want to either stop doing that or change your approach. And it may lead to you becoming a bad salesperson, a bad business person. You just have to accept that. And that's the time to retire and, go into other things, do another job, or give up your job altogether. And people do this. Sometimes they say, that's enough. I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm just going to accept what I've done in the world. I've got enough money to get by, or I'm going to become a monk or a nun. You know, sometimes that happens. But if we really want to improve this mind, there's no room for doubt. If you're harboring unwholesome intentions, taking advantage of people, being dishonest, deluding them just to get your deal done, if you become clear in that, you're not going to be happy to keep those mental states there in your mind and those actions that come from those mental states. You're going to feel regret. You're going to feel, I don't want to do this anymore. So if you're in that position, keep meditating, and eventually it will lead you maybe to change.
Thank you, Luang Por. Sister Jesslyn, could you, yes, please go ahead.
Evening, Luang Por. Sadhu Luang Por, thank you very much, Luang Por, for all your teaching over the 1 over year. Last week, I did say that I have my state, everything is happier. And I just would like to share something that I experienced, which I think some they have brought up. When my mom passed away, so there is always that guilt that I didn't do enough. So I listened to a lot of talks. So in one of the talk, the sister said it was actually from Brahm Center. Happened to be at the top, and she shared that we should also forgive ourselves, because I always felt I didn't do enough for my mom. But my friends, they all tell me is that if they say filial piety is 24 hours, mine is 72 hours, because I was always with my mom, but yet I still feel that it's not enough. So the guilt is there. So she said we have to forgive ourselves. That is one of it. So it helps by understanding that I actually I've actually done as much as I can while she is alive, to be with her, take care of her, and more of like she take care of me. This one, then, but it is still very difficult to let go. And in one of the talk, one of the Bhante was talking about lying. So it says that sometimes the most difficult is when we felt that we are lying to ourselves. So it was during that talk that I finally understood why it was very difficult, because maybe, it's not maybe from young, after my father passed away, I did make a promise to myself that I would take good care of her. So I felt that I didn't. So it was that feeling of lying to myself that was the most difficult. So during the talk, when there was Bhante Kovido, so when he talked about lying, the most difficult is when we felt that we lied to ourselves. That was where I finally could understand and let go. So before that, I actually replaced my missing of my mom with gratitude. But after that talk itself, now whenever I think of my mom, it is always with a lot of gratitude. Not very sure whether it will help those who are actually in grief, help them to forgive themselves. That I forgive myself that I can't take care of her anymore. And also, whatever promises that I have made to her, I actually did fulfill my promise, and that was not really a lie. So I hope that may help those who are feeling guilty of not doing enough for their loved ones. Thank you, Long Po. Sadhu Long Po.
Yeah, just with one thing with our parents passing away, I think it's the most common reaction is that children will feel they could have done more, and it's very normal. But we all, we practice these Brahma Viharas, Dhammas together. So of course we have kindness, compassion for our parents, gratitude for our parents. That leads us on to thinking, I should have done more perhaps, and then we feel guilty that we didn't do more. But also we have to practice equanimity and accept sometimes that you can only do so much. You do the best you can. Of course you could do more, but at the same time, you've done the best you can and you have to move on. And if you keep your mind in the present moment, not dwell on the past, you've learned your lessons from the past that, okay, there was perhaps more I could have done. But now if I just dwell in guilt and regret, that's unwholesome karma I'm making in the present moment. It's not helping them. It's not helping me. I have to move on. I have to let go of the past. But what you can do now is do more good in your life and dedicate it back out of gratitude to your parents, say to your mother. So rather than, dwelling with guilt and regret, just move on from that and then practice the best you can now, every day. And part of your practice is sharing the merits with your mother, and just keep doing that. So, every time you meditate, one part of that meditation is, I'm doing this, and share the merits with my mother. Keep precepts, do chanting, do dana. I'd focus more on that, focus on the present moment, making more good karma, developing the Buddhist path, and then sharing that good karma and the merits with your parents, rather than dwelling on the past, because you can't fix or change the past anymore. So it's time to let it go and focus on the present and what you're doing now.
Sadhu Long Po. Are there any other further questions? Oh, Pin have a pin. Just a moment. Pin, are you able to press on the unmute button? Thank you.
Hello, Sister Bita, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead and start.
Hello, Sadhu Long Po.
Hello.
Sorry, please press the unmute button again and then you can speak. Try again. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Sister Bita.
Yes, go ahead.
Long Po,
Hello.
I would like to thank you. Hello, can you hear me?
Hello. Yep, we can hear you.
Sorry. Thank you so much, Long Po. You have, during this couple of days, especially on what you have sent today on to recollect death is like being with an old friend who reminds us not to be heedless. So I have actually wrote a very short poem, and I hope this helps the others as well who are listening in. Long Po, your teachings and guidance has taught us well. The impermanence of life, we can't dwell. Importantly, we know our family members and friends are all well and happy. It will be comforting to know that when we are ready, contemplating on a life so blessed, there's no fear of death. When we draw our last breath, we do not have to fret. If we do live our lives without any regrets, emotions when we are unable to control, just let it come and let it go. Thank you very much, Luang Por, and I hope others who are also in the same situation will be more comforted by your teachings and your guidance. But I do have a question, Luang Por, and this is also related to death. Does it really matter when a person dies, the way how our last rites are conducted, whether it's by burial or cremation, remains to be strewn in the sea or river, or used as good compost for a plant or a tree? It is like a normal practice or ritual. Is it more for family members to feel comforted and have a closure? Because as we know, when our body doesn't matter anymore, how it's done. Yeah. Thank you, Luang Por. And I wish you well, happy always.
Thank you. Yeah, it's like you say, after we die, it doesn't matter anymore. So whatever happens to our body, we personally, it doesn't really matter. But perhaps for the living, those who are left, families and friends, then they always want to do the right thing. And that's useful to get everyone to come together to honor the one who's died, and we say make merit for them and do good things to help deal with the grief. So what part of dealing with grief is trying to do the right thing according to the wishes of the one who's passed away. So sometimes it's good to let them know what you want done before you die. You say, well, bury me or cremate me or scatter my ashes here or there. Try and think it through ahead and think with compassion for them. Like don't make yourself a burden after you've died by saying, I want to be buried in this expensive place and you're going to have to pay rent and pay lots of money for the next 100 years. Have some compassion for the living and see what's appropriate for them. But if they come together for various funeral ceremonies and then they scatter ashes or whatever is to be done, fine. You can let them know what your wishes are. Or if you want to donate your body to science, that's good as well. There's a few options. So it is worthwhile, while you're still competent, mindful, discuss it, let them know. So then there's less confusion after you've died. And try and think of a useful, compassionate way for your body to be dealt with after you die. But for you personally, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So anything, you can be buried, cremated, given to science. It's all good. But what you want is to look after the minds and hearts of the people who are left and give them some instructions and do things in those instructions. If they can bring people together to do good, all the better.
Rather Luang Por. I think it's also important that at every moment, even if in our living moment, that we celebrate with the community that supported us spiritually. I just thought that I've just noticed in the gallery now, I want to take a moment to shout out to Jeff. Jeff has now disappeared. Jeff from Melbourne. I think we all owe a lot to Jeff for being one of the pathfinders for Buddha Bodhivana Sangha in Melbourne. I noticed that he was here, and I saw the shrine as well. And I'd like to just have a shout out to Jeff and to his family for having planted that great seed for which the Dhamma has sprouted from. So thank you so much, Anumodana, Jeff, to you and your family as well. In this moment, I think, Luang Por, I think I asked you a question just two weekends ago, which is about, coming around to do good. There will be no doubt of people who would pay attention to the things that you do, whether you do good or you do bad. And there is actually around this community people who seem to be attracted to one another, either through wholesome thoughts or unwholesome thoughts. With that, Longpo, could you please comment about this whole topic about stalking in the virtual community?
Right. Well, obviously, as human beings, we still have our desires. We're not enlightened yet, so we still have craving for company, for relationships, for intimacy, for pleasure. And that's going to come up wherever we are, whether we're at work, we're at home, we're online, we're in person, we're in a Buddhist temple. You know, we all have desires affecting us. So it's not unexpected if even in a Buddhist community you have somebody who's doing good, whether it's Sangha member, a monk or a nun, or a lay person, layman, laywoman. When you do good, when you practice the Dhamma, good qualities arise and they're quite attractive. So sometimes you get people are attracted to other practitioners. You know, somebody is coming and they have their own suffering, their own feelings and pain and suffering and problems and so on, and then they come to a Buddhist monastery, so they may get attracted or find there are those people that they're attracted to, whether it's Sangha or laity, and so they start to follow them. But they know that what happens is it can happen that you start off out of faith, out of seeking a way to free yourself from suffering, to improve your life, to be happier. Starts off with a reasonably pure intention, but then over time it can change to just desire, to own, to have, to want. So then you may fixate on a person. So monks and nuns have to be aware of this danger with laity. Sometimes laity get fixated on the teacher or a particular practitioner in a monastery. And similarly, laymen, laywomen also have to watch out for this, because the quality of metta, which many people are developing in a Buddhist community, is attractive. So if somebody is feeling lonely or lacking in that, then they'll be attracted to someone else and they can become fixated on them. But then you have to stop and think, well, if I'm attracted to this person, this is no longer metta, this is no longer coming from a good intention. It's more selfish, isn't it? I want this person for myself. This is not what the Buddha was teaching. The Buddha was teaching for us to support each other as Kalyana Mitta in the practice, and encourage each other to practice more and provide supportive conditions for the practice. So if one is becoming fixated on a person, you like them, they're attracted to you, you know, that can change from metta into just attraction, sexual desire, and just wanting that person. If you notice that happening in your thinking, that's the time to stop relating to that person, to avoid them, to change your behavior, because you're going to become an obstacle for that person. It's going to become an obstacle for you in your practice, and you're going to become an obstacle for that person. You're no longer supporting them in the development of the path. And you see this happening all the time. You know, people begin with an interest in Dhamma and good intention, but in the end, they're just looking for a partner, maybe. You know, if you reduce it down to the simplest, lowest common denominators, you know, people even in Buddhist communities no longer are looking to support others in the practice and find out the Dhamma for themselves. They're just looking for a partner, and then they become a problem. So as Sangha, we have to be aware of this, and the lay community as well. If you really want the Dhamma, sometimes you have to be careful who you relate to, who you talk to, especially the opposite sex. And then if you see desire coming up for another person, the desire to have them, want them, you know, have them as an intimate partner, is your responsibility to not act on that and say, this is inappropriate, this is wrong, and move away. And you know, stop seeing them, stop contacting them, change your mode of behavior. That's what that's what you have to do. That's what you have to learn. And anyone who's been practicing Buddhism in a Buddhist community for a long time, hopefully has learned that. These are lessons we have to learn. And you're learning the dangers of metta, the dangers of your own desire, your own attraction. And you don't want to become, you know, in the case of a stalker, you don't want to be stalking someone who's pure in their desire to practice the Dhamma, and you're going to become a problem to them. You're not helping them and you're not helping yourself. You're making bad karma for yourself and you're becoming a problem to that person. So that's your own personal responsibility in the practice, is to recognize that behavior and say, this is not good. This is not leading to anyone's benefit. And it's not just Sangha that you may become the object of somebody who's stalking, seeking a relationship, seeking a partner. It could be another layperson in the community. And we all have desires, attachments. So we're all vulnerable in that sense. So we each have a responsibility to not take advantage of others, not to harm others in that way. There's quite a difficult thing to deal with, because our desire for a partner, for intimacy, is so strong. It can be overwhelming, can't it? And you can see it all the time in the Buddhist community, as well as in the workplace, in any group of people. These desires are going on all the time, and you see them all the time. One of the things Ajahn Chah noticed when he went to the US teaching meditation, he had a meditation retreat full of people, and he turned to the monks one day and he said, these people, they're just looking for a partner. They're not looking for Nibbana. That's a question you have to ask yourself. Why am I practicing the Dhamma? Is it for Nibbana and for developing Sila, Samadhi, Panya, letting go? Or am I just looking for another partner? And, if I pick another person on a retreat or in a meditation place or in the Sangha as my partner, you're becoming Mara. You're becoming an obstacle for that person. So you have to try and recognize that as better just to let go, move away, separate from that person. So if it's a Sangha member and they see that happening, they'll tend to move away. They'll cut off that person, or they'll just stop talking to them, stop meeting them, for the higher good. And I've told many stories about this. Great teachers, even Ajahn Chah himself, sometimes he had to leave people who became too infatuated with him. He just left them behind, and stopped meeting them, stopped communicating with them, because they were becoming infatuated. The trouble with the online world is, it's hard, because if you have a connection online where you can keep texting, emailing that person, keep chasing them, and if they're in a position where they're exposed to that because they're running a Buddhist center or some kind of Zoom group or something, well, it's up to you to be responsible and not seek to contact them if you feel you're coming from the wrong place. You have to try and be honest with yourself, and that's part of the practice. You would call that the practice of good sila. If you recognize, say, sexual desire or the desire for intimacy coming up in your relationship to a fellow Buddhist practitioner, and it's inappropriate, well, you have to stop. You have to change. Not easy, but it's the correct thing to do.
I don't know, Paul. Thank you for answering the question. I feel like a big mama, big sister, having to look after young boys, young handsome boys who are currently helping to support this Zoom session. So I hope that the message is well delivered and received as well. Okay. Yeah, Lampo, would you like to, before we let you go, would you like to perhaps give a shout out to the dates for the upcoming year-end retreat, so that people could block their dates first?
The meditation retreat?
Yes.
Yes, we're planning to have an online meditation retreat at the end of December. As many of you familiar with the monastery will be aware, every year we have an end-of-year retreat. And again, because of the COVID situation, we're not yet confident to have a group retreat in the monastery yet. So we're going to have an online retreat from is it the 27th of December or the 28th?
28th.
28th. So 28th, 29th, 30th, 31st to the 1st of January. So the last 5 days of December, there'll be an online retreat, and later on we'll be giving some information about that, and you're welcome to participate and join in.
So, well, thank you, Lampo.
Okay, we'll finish the session there today, and we'll just pay respects to the Triple Gem.